Welcome back to the class. And we are in the second session in which we are discussing the essay by David Morse, a very important sociologist or anthropologist from the UK, who has been studying, a very senior scholar who has been studying caste relations and caste system in India for past several decades. So, in a very lengthy essay, around 47 pages, essay appeared in Modern Asian Studies, a prestigious journal. David Morse is looking at the kind of transformations of caste relations in the neoliberal era. So, we discussed the first part of the essay in the last class, where he shows that how caste was perceived mostly as something confined to the realm of the social or that of the religious and the cultural, and why that it was not seen as a part of the larger economy or that of the markets. And it has its own roots in colonial as well as in the post-colonial scholarship. And he also argues that the 1990s, ever since the market was opened or India experienced the process of liberalization, more and more focus was was put on this relationship, this role of caste in market, and a host of interesting studies emerged. So he argues that the kind of a large scale changes that happened in the Indian economy, the relation, the separation of caste with the occupation. Okay, the occupational criterion of caste has been very significantly damaged, but that doesn't mean that the caste has become an irrelevant category in order to understand the mobility of different sections of population. So in the previous section, the concluding section, we argued that the inferiorized class, that the lower caste, the Dalits, are predominantly seen in the occupations that are considered to be lowly or considered to be at the bottom of the economic structure, and they have not really made sufficient movement up in the hierarchy of jobs and occupations and other things, which are usually monopolized, or which is usually kind of occupied by the more privileged sections of the society. Now, he identifies three interrelated processes that have kind of contributed to that. First is differential valuation or ranking of occupations and derivatively markets. So he says that the occupations are not ranked equally. Okay, there are different values, different statuses attached to different occupations and different markets, and that is very closely connected with caste. Second, the effects of categorical distinctions and caste identity and caste networks. What are the kind of effects of this categorical distinctions? And third, the combination of these two processes as an outright form of discrimination. Okay, so these are the three ones. So evidence for persisting differential valuation of workers, business and markets is strong. Dalit sweepers, Brahmin cooks and so on. So if you look into a host of jobs that are available, different types of occupations that are available, we know that they have been graded, and there are very strong sense of social prestige and honor attached to each one of them. Even though we say that every job has its own job, and every job has to be respected, we know that that's only a very hollow word. That's not how our society looks at the different kind of jobs. Certain jobs always carry higher prestige, higher honor. For example, the job of a teacher, a doctor, an engineer, or a bureaucrat, or an IAS officer, it carries quite a lot of very high high prestige. At the same time, that of a person who works manually, a blue collar worker, a barber, a washerman, they carry much lesser social honor, and the people who do supposed to be the most menial jobs. But please keep in mind that these menial jobs are some of the most essential services. Okay, like sweeping the roads or removing the garbage from the house, or sanitary workers. Okay, people who are clearing the drainage systems. When your toilet is blocked, you are not able to use the toilet, then somebody has to come in. Okay, so who are the people who are coming and then cleaning up your clogged toilet pipelines? They are the people who are coming from the lowest sections. Okay, so that is considered to be the most polluting kind of a job. We never give any prestige or respect to such jobs, because they are those jobs. It's a very dirty job. You are supposed to deal with dirty objects. It stings. It's very undesirable to see. So the whole question is that this gradation of these jobs have a historical context. Okay, throughout history, in Indian history especially, with respect to caste system, you have had different sections of population who were who were doing these traditional occupations for past several centuries. Okay, so that the upper caste simply did not have to think about some of their very essential services. They simply did not have to think about some of these very dirty, polluting aspects of their life. They simply did not have to think about how to wash their soiled clothes. They simply did not have to think about what to do with their human excreta every day. There were specialized people. There was people who specialized in removing or cleaning these jobs. They never had to worry about who will cut their hair. There were specific sections for that. And it is not only that there were division of labours, they were division of labourers with very high degree of status attached to people, say from the priestly class, from the teachers, from upper caste, whereas very low sense of or there is a kind of a disdain was attached to people from the lower section. And the point is that even now that continues. So one of the important points that David Morse points out is that this differential valuation of work still continues. Okay, you will find Dalits being the most predominant section among the sweepers, or the people who the people who clean our roads or our toilets in IT establishments, in government schools, in government officials, in corporations, in municipalities, in panchayats, you will find that. And conversely, you will find there is heavy demand for Brahmins as priests, heavy demand for Brahmins as cooks, because a food prepared by Brahmin is considered to be the most pure. And there are sections of population who would consume food that is prepared only by Brahmins. So you have this very differential form of treatment towards jobs. We simply do not look at them as jobs that can be done by trained people. It's not only about training. It's not only about your aptitude or ability. There are a lot more things are involved in it. The caste segmentation of labour markets and business indicates a cultural logic embedded within and perpetuated through economic activity. It is the demonstration of the fact that in economic transactions, people are treated differently according to their social identity, an idea central to the field of identity economics in labour recruitment, etc. So this interesting field, this identity economics, tries to understand that. For example, there are quite often very important arguments about why certain kinds of jobs are reserved only to people with a very fair skin. Jobs in film industries, jobs in marketing, jobs in media, in television, in these kind of professions. If you are somebody with a fair skin, then that's a very added qualification, and it's very difficult for people with much darker complexion to break into that, because there your visual appeal matters, the way you speak matters, your pronunciation matters, your etiquettes matter, your personality, your soft skill matters. And for each of these aspects what I mentioned now, your etiquette, your speaking skills, your pronunciation, your demeanors, all these things have a very specific caste connotation. The people who are quite good at English with the neutral accent and with all kind of excellent communication skills, most likely they are supposed to be, they come from the most privileged sections, which obviously is translated into people from upper class and upper caste system. So starting with that, there are quite a lot of interesting studies which talk about how the caste and these matters really reflect in labour recruitment. Because labour recruitment, you usually think that it's only your certificates matter, your performance matters. It's not. There are very interesting studies done by scholars like Sukhdev Thorat and others, where identical fake resumes were created, and only thing that they changed were the caste and caste of the applicants, and that they were sent to different recruitment agencies, and the response, they were able to show very statistical difference in that. The caste of the people which were shown as higher were given a far better treatment than the people who showed a very negative a lower caste thing. So there was always this caste segmentation of labor markets and business with respect to these notions of prestige associated with that. And then network based labor recruitment through gang leaders and foremen, including the construction site and brick field destinations of super exploited seasonal migrant causal laborers, produce caste segmented labor forces and underline the necessity for or inescapability of a categorical membership. If you look into, because now this migration is a very, very important area that has attracted quite a lot of scholarly attention. So if you look at how migrations take place from quite a lot of northern states like West Bengal or Orissa or Bihar or UP, there are a lot of people moving to different metropolitan cities, people moving to southern states like Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka. So many of these things are very specifically mediated through the caste relationships. So it's the network, the person who recruits the people, he uses his caste network, kinship network to recruit further people. So they all work on the basis of this caste relationship. Caste networks are especially important in business regulations where risks are high, formal institutions weak, and selective trust at a premium. And as I was mentioning, some of the very high value enterprises like say diamond industry or gold industry or such kind of things, where the trust is something very important. They may not have this very sophisticated account keeping mechanisms or surveillance cameras or other thing, but there is so much a premium on the trust, because they are dealing with very expensive artifacts, and usually you tend to trust your caste members more than you trust others. And it's a very tragic scenario, because you consider caste as a replacement for the personal qualifications or personal qualities, but that's how it works. That's how a host of traditional guild systems and other things worked in Indian context. But the point is that such notions continue to work in the Indian context. Now, occupational ranking, categorical exclusion, opportunity hoarding, and the network and the work of network combine the third caste effect, discrimination. So there he also uses the term opportunity hoarding. Opportunity hoarding, that we have heard about hoarding of food grains. Now it's not much of a news because it's food grains are freely available in the market, but there were times when, especially at the time of famines, there were times when the traders would hoard huge amount of food grains to see to that their prices go up and then sell it in the black market. So what does it mean? It means that you are able, you keep a host of a huge amount of resources to yourself and then sell it off at a premium. So opportunity hoarding is also a term that was made familiar with social scientists to say that people are able to withhold a lot of opportunity, especially in terms of employment, to themselves and so that others don't really get into that. And I can give you a number of examples. Take the case of, say for example, schools or colleges managed by private caste associations. That there are a host of colleges or schools established by caste associations, and invariably job opportunities in these institutions are given to members of their own caste. And in a way, it is nothing but opportunity hoarding, because even when there are equally competent, equally qualified people waiting outside, this not given, they are not admitted, they are not given a job. Rather, they would wait for somebody from their caste group to come and then give that. And that will have cascading effects in the long run. And the most tragic part is that even in government funded institutions, okay, where the management is able to make appointment. Management makes appointment people on the basis of this caste, or they take huge money. Then the whole burden of providing salary to these people fall on the government. That means it is from the taxpayers' money that a group of caste members who get employment in these institutions are paid their salary and pension throughout their death. And usually nothing happens in such scenarios, and the situation continues. So he says that all these factors, categorical exclusion and then occupational ranking or opportunity hoarding, all these things really combine to the third point, that is discrimination. It is well understood that Dalit face barriers to gaining qualifications within schools and university systems, including just when the premium of education rose to the post-liberalization period. I hope that you are familiar with the kind of debates that are happening about the reservation system in the educational institutions, especially institutions of higher learning, prestigious institutions like IITs and IIMs. So a host of data have shown that that many of these institutions are not able to fill the required number of seats reserved for the people from the backward communities, whether it's in PhD program or in other program. And we have absolutely no data about the number of people who successfully complete that. The number of dropouts also is very high among these disadvantaged caste groups. So in spite of these reservations, in spite of so many legal and constitutional provisions in place, the educational attainment of Dalit groups or backward caste groups are much below than that of the upper class sections. So now, especially in this time, this is the time because the premium of education to when the premium of education rose in the post-liberalization period, because now in a post-liberalization period, your educational qualification is seen as the most important point, not your family honor, not your prestige, not anything else. Your educational qualification seems to be the most important one. Yet that seems to be out of bound for many of the people who are coming from the less privileged background. And I also must remind you that it is not only about caste discrimination, but it is also about privatization of education. Especially higher education has been privatized significantly, where education comes at a very high price, and people from the lower class and caste find it very difficult to pay such huge amounts. And there is good evidence, there's a good evidence that the Indian labour market discriminates both directly on caste identity and on imputed characteristics. The job market implicitly demands of applicants traits, skills, linguistic and cultural competence that the education system does not explicitly give, and that come from families transmitting a dominant class caste culture bundled as individual merit and indirectly signalled by caste identity. The whole concept of cultural capital by Bourdieu. Sometime back I mentioned about the role of, say, language speaking skills or fair complexion in getting certain kind of jobs. Now there is very fascinating theories about that. One of the most important theories provided by Pierre Bourdieu, a French sociologist, and his theory of cultural capital. So cultural capital, he argues, is that such kind of traits that you accumulate over a period of time. For example, the importance that you give to education, and that in certain communities, maybe your family, both the parents are so serious about your education. Okay, they give you, they compel you, they scold you, they punish you many times. They all the time tell you to study more, and they would give you a gift if you get first place in your examination. So there is an atmosphere which really puts so much of pressure on you to study well. And if you compare another family coming from a very poor background, you simply may not or will not find so much of preoccupation with this the whole question of studying well. And of course, a host of other things like your your traits, your skills, linguistic skills, your ability to use certain softwares, your exposure to social media, your exposure to technological stuff, your linguistic, your ability to use English, your pronunciation, your accent, and then cultural competence that the education. So these are the things which educational system never gives any importance, or education system never trains you in. These are the traits that you really accumulate and then come into an education institution. But these do really matter later at a time. For example, when you sit for an interview, the interviewers would be definitely impressed, along with the academic content of your answers. They would be definitely impressed by your complexion, your beauty, your language skills, your ability to the way you look more sophisticated. All these things play a very important role in the contemporary market scenario. There's no denial of that. It's very it's very easy to say that these things do not happen, but they do happen. So such a scenario, the dominant class culture bundled as individual merit, because these things will be seen as merit, and they take this particular argument of merit and then indirectly signaled by caste identity, by cultural capital by Pierre Bourdieu. So such discriminations then produce caste differentiated expectations, since upper caste class graduates experience prejudicial norms and networks as casteless merit, whereas Dalits find themselves negatively identified with a caste background at every turn. So there is a very interesting argument that the upper castes, the general, the so-called the general category, so what does general means? General in reality means the upper caste, but it's never used in that way. You have scheduled caste, you have OBC, then you are general, but the general is nothing but the upper caste. So there is a very interesting argument of Satish Deshpande about the invisibility of the upper caste and the hyper visibility of the lower castes. I found that argument extremely fascinating, because you never talk about caste of the general caste, the general people. They are seen as casteless, okay? Or you never talk about the caste of people who pay huge money as management fees and then get admission. They are seen as management seats. They are never seen as people who pay money and then come, and that is never seen as an assault on the meritocracy. Whereas the caste identity of the lower caste people, lower caste who avail this reservation is always highlighted. There is a hyper visibility towards that. Dalits find themselves negatively identified with their caste background at every turn, because they are seen as people who do not adequately have the merit, whereas the merit is supposed to be compromised. It's usually said that the merit is compromised with the introduction of reservation. I am not going into that debate, but it's a very, very important debate. A host of studies that document the prejudices and discrimination faced by industries owned by Dalits. A lot of interesting studies. You can look into this David Moses essay. There are quite a lot of references. So what can be concluded about caste in the post-liberalization economy? He comes to the conclusion: as seen in the village, caste is subjected to powerful forces of change. Ideas and practices of markets bring expectations of equality, and in many contexts an emphasis on skills, experience and competence have replaced the ascriptive characteristics and complementarity of caste. Okay, it is true that this large-scale changes have significantly altered the traditional caste system, and a host of new contexts, experience on skills, experience and competence have replaced the ascriptive characteristics and complementarity of caste. What do you mean by ascriptive characteristics? Ascriptive characteristics are the things that are given to you. For example, you are supposed to follow a particular rule, particular job, then social and religious disabilities. All these things are gone to a large extent. But at the same time and the same place, caste-based identity, networks, interactions and judgments are unavoidably part of the way many markets work, as caste transforms itself as a regulative structure of the economy. That's the most important point. The caste transforms itself as a regulative structure of economy. And please keep in mind, we are talking about a globalized economy. We are talking about a globalized economy, we are talking about a neoliberal economy where ideally all these things, factors should not have been there. Everybody, the market must be able to work typically on the basis of rationality, economic rationality, where all these considerations have absolutely no place. But in reality, we see caste playing a very significant role. And let us end this thing with a quote by Harris White, Barbara Harris White, another very senior academic scholar from the Britain, who has done extremely important works on Indian society. The power of caste as social structure of regulation in the economy, controlling the supply and price of goods, rents and labor, and influencing the operations of formal institutions and the market, as Harris White argues, comes from the fact that the part of the economy that involves the majority of the people is informal, without regulation by legal institution structures of the state. As such, these influences remain hardly touched by liberalization. So, a host of aspects which which are so predominant in the Indian economy continue to be informal, whether in rural areas or in semi-urban areas, in urban areas. Most of the work, most of the economic activity takes place in informal sector, and they are hardly regulated by the state. And these are Barbara Harris White very strongly argues that they remain hardly touched by liberalization. And that is the kind of a conclusion that David Moss also wants to draw. So I hope that you would have found this essay interesting, because it kind of combines very interesting arguments about the longevity of caste, the relevance of caste in the contemporary era. So please do look up for this article. You can easily find it on Google. It's freely available. You can download it. It's an excellent essay. I would strongly recommend for anybody who is interested in the study of caste in India. Okay, so let us conclude this session and meet you for the next class. Thank you.